the issues that we have to talk about are specified on the agenda.
Right. Okay.
I'm trying to get everything going here and get it streaming on YouTube. Give me 1 second here.
Hi there, Mr. Starlin.
Hey, how are you, Stuart?
I'm good, thanks.
Good.
How's your first week as an independent?
It's interesting, man. I like it. It's a new world, Stuart.
Well, I would just say it's a different world.
That's right.
It looks like we're good on YouTube here. Stuart's all right to give my little meeting intro.
Yep, go ahead, Andrew.
Okay, the format of this meeting consists of board members and applicants attending a live meeting on Zoom. Looks like we have 9 members and applicants in attendance. For applicants, please only speak when the chair indicates it's time to do so. For example, he may ask if anyone is present to speak for an application. In addition, as usual, prior to addressing the board, please state your name, address, and affirm that you will tell the truth. This meeting is also streaming live on the city's YouTube channel. For the public, viewers on YouTube have the ability to type in comments. If you enter in a comment on YouTube, please first indicate your name and address. Comments can be entered at any time, but will be relayed to the board when the chair indicates it's time to do so during the public hearing portion of the application. Any other comments submitted to me prior to tonight's meeting have also been forwarded to the board. Please also be aware there's an approximate 15-second delay between the Zoom meeting and the live stream on YouTube. So that's all I have for now, and I'll turn it over to Stuart to begin the meeting.
Thank you, Andrew. This is a special meeting of the Worcester Board of Building and Zoning Appeals. This is a volunteer board of Worcester citizens established to hear requests for variances, appeals, and similar applications as specified in the City of Worcester Planning and Zoning Code. Board members present this evening are Doug McMillan, Ken Suchan, Ben Gunn, Greg McIlvain, and Mark Reynolds. My name is Stuart Fitzgibbon, and I am chairman of this board. Because these meetings are a matter of legal record, the public portion of the meeting is recorded. Therefore, we ask that if and when you speak, please speak loudly and clearly. We also ask that prior to speaking, each speaker gives his or her name, address, and affirmation to tell the truth. Following the meeting, the appellant for each application will receive notification of the board's decision. The application to be considered tonight is BZA 20-27. Our first agenda item is roll call. Doug?
Here.
Ken?
Here.
Ben?
Here.
Greg?
Here.
And Mark?
Here.
And I too am here. So our first agenda item is BZA 20-27. Justin Starlin requesting an area variance from Planning and Zoning Code Section 1115.03A to allow a building within the front yard building setback, and Section 1119.03 to allow a building to deviate from exterior design requirements at 505 West Larwell Street in the RT zoning district. Is there anyone here to speak on behalf of this application?
Yes, Chair Fitzgibbon, Justin Starlin, home address 4149 Congress Road, Worcester, Ohio. I affirm to tell the truth. Uh-oh, I see a shared
Thank you.
screen.
Please go ahead and present your application.
Okay. The application before, is for one of hopefully a number of homes in the former Larwell Trailer Park, located in the 500 block. I'm representing a I will say, a philanthropic development group that has put some money together and some efforts to try to redevelop the site. And when I say try to redevelop the site, in the application, we highlighted that there were a number of constraints and difficulties in developing the site and coming up with a master plan. So before you is the very first unit for a proposed development, which would have residential, single-family residential homes through the site. The site is about just over 4 acres, but we probably would say that 2.5, 2.6 acres is usable. We've been working with city administration and with Worcester Growth. This right here, this restrictions shows it nicely, to try to come up with a feasible plan for redevelopment of this site, given the restrictions that are currently in place. The first house that we would like to start is the one that is being proposed, a parcel on Larwell Street. We recognize that it's probably not in the typical, design standards as the RT district. Of course, 85 to 90% of the homes in the RT district are probably 75 years old at least, or they're older housing stock. So this is a unique situation, and that's why the need for the variance is. We also have highlighted in the application, and most, I think, if not most, if not everybody, but most know that this was the former trailer park. So we are thinking that the proposed housing unit is a much better upgrade into what it was in the past. So it is a little unique. I don't know if the city administration was able to articulate a past development in the RT district of multiple units. And this is the first of hopefully a number of them within. Also, lastly, the site itself, it will, if we get this one done, and we believe that there's a market for these houses, we really do. This development group is dedicated to, again, doing multiple, and we'll be working with the city administration to find a way to put a public street into that site. And quite candidly, we have found it difficult, to say the least, as far as challenging to come up with a plan, but I think we've got a good one. And this first house supports that further development. I know you have the information in front of you, and would welcome any questions that you have about the project.
So Justin, can you give us roughly a sense of how many houses you're intending to develop on the property?
Sure. Yeah. So there's been some conceptuals which we didn't share in here just because, I don't think we're at that point yet, Stuart. But we've been working in conjunction with city admin and the engineering department to work on those restrictions. We could see anywhere from a low end 7 to a high end 11 on the site. And
looking at the page that we have up on the screen, essentially, would those houses run in a line kind of along the sewer easement up through the middle of the property between the hills and the floodplain?
Exactly. It would hug that.
Justin, we're not hearing you.
Floodplain and floodway. This site is not in the floodway. So as far as it being affected by even a 100-year flood is not going to occur. On the document that you also have in front of you, I think it's the restrictions. I'm seeing that. The shaded blue area would be floodway. The light blue area without any cross hashing would be the floodplain. There is restrictions for development in the floodplain, but we would receive that approval from the floodplain administrator, Tim Monet, to make sure that our floor elevation is above that point. So we do recognize, and I did read the letter from one of the neighbors. We do recognize that it's close, but we're not in that area, and we'll be working with Tim for that approval. Can you hear me okay, Stuart?
Yeah, I can now. A moment ago, I couldn't hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry about that.
And when I look at the one drawing, is it where that red, where exactly is the first site? I
Yeah,
don't see where it explains it in a map here. I guess I'm missing it.
It should be on your screen now, Doug.
Okay,
There it is.
it's where the red is.
Correct. It's the
Oh.
reddish. Yep.
Yeah, that's what I was asking. Okay, that's what I thought. All right.
And so the driveway cut for that house is what appears to have been the original entrance to the trailer park.
That is correct, Stuart. And full disclosure, we looked at putting that house to the west or right next to the house that's currently on Larwell that's in your photo.
Right.
But look what we have going through the center of it.
Yeah,
right?
the sewer easement.
Correct. So we know that the first one is going to be the hardest one, and that's what we're presenting to you tonight. And then just again, for transparency purposes, the design of this house, the others would be similar. They wouldn't be exact, but they currently is proposed by the development group to be similar.
And just, are these houses intended to be built and then sold to other people or the owners or how is that? What's the thought there?
The initial intent, Doug, is to market those as single family homes and to sell those to the market. There has been some discussion about those being rentals if the market's not there, but our intent is for single family and to sell them.
Okay.
What would be the price for the 1,400 square foot home
I don't,
approximately?
yeah, I don't know if I'd want to disclose that at this point. I don't know what it has to do with the application. I can tell you that, Ken, we're trying to bring it in as economically possible that we possibly can. We've got numbers at 150 to 155 that we have in our mind, but
That's what I would have expected because based on current building standards. And I just commenting because the neighbor who objected for other reasons, but mentioned these as cheap ranches, and
Yeah.
that's not cheap.
well, yeah, and on top of that, this would be the lowest price you could bring a house in. I mean,
Yes.
it's construction's crazy right now.
Yeah, and definitely relative to current property values. If you brought that house in at 150 to 155, that would definitely be the low end of the market, particularly for a new home.
And that's the intent of this group, and I think that's why my involvement, post life right now, my chamber involvement and helping this group. Now I'm able to be out front since I'm not at the chamber, but the truth is that a profit is while we like capitalism and profit is not a dirty word, that's not the intent of this group. The intent is to find a model, articulate that it can be done at a very economical price, and to be a group that can do multiple homes.
So going back to the specific variances then that you're asking for, one is having the garages out front instead of set back, which is more typical in the RT neighborhood.
Yeah,
And it looks like it's that sewer easement that is driving that decision.
it is. And then secondly, Stuart, again, quite candidly, it is some of the design. So both elements are forcing that to move forward. If this was right at Beaver Street on the historic area, right across from, some of those homes, I don't think we would propose this. But in the application, we look at this site as kind of standalone. I mean, it's really, I don't want to say hidden back in there, but it's its own piece. And we think that across the street is just a standalone garage. I mean, we don't think it's completely inappropriate there or inappropriate, period.
So Justin, in the neighborhood, it states that most of the homes are 2-story houses.
Yep.
And like Stuart mentioned, with the garages in the back. Why are you trying to go away from the 2-story traditional look of the neighborhood and then again, I know the style of the home you guys picked, this is the garage out front, but you're looking at almost 4.5 times the traditional neighborhood standard. And
Yeah.
Can you kind of explain your guys' thoughts about completely going away from that, from the neighborhood's look?
Yeah, good question, Ben. Again, if this group decides to do infill literally right next to other homes, I don't think that what you're seeing in front of you, Ben, would be proposed. However, we look again as a mini little development, and we've chosen to do this. We think this is an easier route for us to get the square footage that the market demands. And it gets our feet wet. If we decide to do infill, which would be right next to 2 older second-story homes, as an example, we would come in with a second-story floor plan. But right now, this allows us to get our square footage, which we think the market's going to demand. That's it.
Okay, so if I hear you correctly, Justin, you're saying that you do have in mind a 2-story plan if needed, if you've got to shrink the footprint down?
Not on this site. We don't think it's ideal, Stuart. If we were going to do infill right in the middle of a historic district, we would not look to do this. We would look to do a 2-story.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm breaking up. I'm sorry, guys. But yeah, and you can see, as an example, Stuart, in that aerial that you see right now, there's a empty lot at the southeast corner, if you can see that. We've already talked to them about, we've already talked about them. Now, if we did something there, that would be a 2-story. That would be looking, more traditional. We just think that this site, given its past use, giving its, it's isolated, we think that the proposed use is appropriate.
I also noticed in the application that you said if the variances are not granted, that the land may deteriorate or not be taken care of. So I just want to make sure that you're saying if we don't grant the variances, that you guys are just gonna let the grass and weeds or whatever just go, you're not gonna maintain the land?
You
Or
know,
what's the
no,
plan there?
yeah, I think it would be in a natural state. I don't think there would be a lot of interest to redevelop. I know that we've had conversations with people that have experience in this, a lot more experience than we do in development, quite candidly, Ben. And they've said, man, this site is difficult. So I don't want to say that it completely take the wind out of our sails, but we would do this house elsewhere then. I mean, we would not look at this site right now, and we would probably just steer away from downtown. And that's just being pretty straight about it, kind of where we're at. And I'm
Well, and
not the only.
I think that's why we started, Justin, with the questions on what was the larger vision of this,
Yeah.
as
get it.
opposed to just focusing on the one house.
Yeah, we looked at row houses, the 2-story row houses like you've seen like in Columbus. But it's like in a park setting, if it as an example. And that's why the city, Worcester Growth specifically, sold it to this investment group, because they didn't need another park. But row houses in the middle of, let's say, green area doesn't make quite, it didn't have the right feel. Did we look at it? We did.
Well, and I
Hey,
think it's
Justin,
probably, go ahead, Mark.
I'm sorry. On that, on the diagram that shows the outline of the parcel along with the outline of the house, can you just show us real quick, roughly where you guys are proposing that the road would be? Just for a layout standpoint.
Yeah. Well, yeah, right. Yeah, there you go. And Andrew knows, because he's heard that conversation, but it would come in just like his little hand was showing, and
Okay.
it would really sharp at that back turn and open up then.
Okay.
Yeah, so essentially the road's going to run down the sewer easement,
Yep.
and then you'll put houses on either side of it until the floodplain stops you.
Yep. We think we can fit a couple homes into the right of the road along the floodplain floodway. It's tight, don't get me wrong, but then off to the left, it's pretty open, and we think we can do some cool things with that hill. Also, lastly, or I don't know if it's lastly unless there's questions, but on my end, we also like this location because if the market is not responsive to what we're doing, then that allows us to still keep the area pretty natural, and maybe we go that route moving forward as well. It doesn't put the home in the middle of a 4.5 acre parcel. Does that make sense?
Yeah, actually, that's a great thought. It makes it look like an extension of the neighborhood on the street.
Yeah. So it gives us flexibility. It gives, and we'll work with the city on that.
Yeah. So again, we're back to the very specific variances that you've got an architectural style that's a variance to the RT. So that's really what we're having to decide, whether this is enough of an island that's unique, that you don't have to build as if you would build infill.
Absolutely. I think that's how we looked at it. Yep.
Have you spoken to any of the neighbors about the look of the house and the plan for this specific lot?
Two of the neighbors directly across the street. The name escapes me. Piecraft, I believe, and maybe Dennison. those two. Other than that, the answer is no.
And they are the owners or the renters, or is it rented, or is it owner occupied?
You know, Doug, I can only speak on the Piecraft. I know he's an owner. I don't know about I do know he's owner. I can look it up.
Owner occupied, yeah, okay.
Yep. Correct.
Thank you.
And what did those families that you talked to have to say about your proposal?
Yeah, Ben, you know, I think naturally it's going to be mixed, you know, it's 4.5 acres where you have no neighbors, right? So naturally it's like, well, I don't really want to see anything happen there, right? You know how that goes. But if they were, I don't want to say excited about it, but no issues with like, oh, that doesn't look like the neighborhood, or not a design end. More of a, well, we're glad to see that it's going to be, you know, it's going to look nice, if that makes sense. But naturally, yeah, they'd probably just like it to be 4.5 acres of field or yard, you know. Again, that's being honest.
Okay, other questions from members of the board?
Yeah, and I don't think any of the partners are on. There's 3 partners in on this project. I am just the representative, but they are, I will call them philanthropists. So I think if one goes and it sells and there's a market, that will happen. That development will fill out. And then also this group has interest in the infill, which would be a completely different product. But I'm sure there would be some kind of, I don't know how you could build a home in the infill of RT and not probably be requesting something from you folks. But it would look like the neighborhood, if that makes sense.
Okay, anything further from the board? All right, if not, Andrew, let's go ahead and open the public hearing, please.
Okay, I've opened it up on YouTube. We have a couple people watching. And I guess I'll just note, I did forward an email to the board members from residents. And I also received a few other calls, more just interested parties that didn't really have a strong opinion either way.
Yeah, and just for the record, the email was from a resident who was concerned about having something built in the floodplain. And that issue has been addressed by moving the footprint out of the floodplain. And that's not really our purview anyway.
Yeah, if it was, we'll have to get that requirement or that approval from the floodplain administrator anyhow, right? So if it's in, we're not going to be able to build. But it's not.
Well, and I think, Justin, the other thing you probably ought to check, I'm not an expert in the flood insurance rules, but you, if you're building anywhere in a floodplain, regardless of whether, well, you can do it, but then you have to have flood insurance, and then it makes buying the house incredibly expensive for the buyer.
And that's how the feds have got people to stop building in the floodplain, and right? Yep.
That would be correct.
Exactly.
I figured as a developer, you would be sensitive to that, but
Yeah.
so the floodplain is an issue, but not in the way that the person commenting thought.
Correct.
Okay, Andrew, anything on YouTube?
And I'm not getting any comments. I'm sorry, I'm not getting any comments here on YouTube.
Okay. Have we had the public portion open long enough?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. All right, then we will close the public hearing. Any further questions from members of the board?
Oh,
All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Stuart, I'd like to move that we go to an
Just,
executive session for the board.
Okay, we have a motion from Mark for executive session. Is there a second?
Yes, second.
Okay, a second from Ken. Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, say no. All right, Andrew, if you would put us into a breakout room, please.
and I'll just note that Brad was just able to join us now.
Hi, Brad.
apologize for my lateness. Hi.
No problem. Okay, for the record, Brad is now in attendance.
And then, hey, well, after you guys are done, will I just come back on then, Andrew?
Yeah, actually, you just stay where you are, Justin.
All right.
We will leave and we will come back.
Sounds good. Thank you.
You guys getting anything?
No,
Not yet.
not yet.
Try that again. All right, I apologize. I'm not having any luck getting this started here. And I'm not sure why it's not letting us into the breakout rooms. Justin and Will, I'm going to put you into the waiting room, and then I'm going to stop the live broadcast and the recording, and then we'll pick up when you guys come
That
back.
sounds like a good plan. to
Okay.
me. All right.
So Justin, you're going to go in the waiting room. I apologize for the technical difficulty. Wait 1 second here. Pause the recording. So if you're on YouTube, the feed's gonna stop. And I guess, can we give maybe a time that you think might be acceptable? 10 minutes?
Let's go
'Cause we're
for,
not gonna
let's
know
go
when to come
for
back.
15 minutes.
Okay, so if you're watching on YouTube, it's 6:35 right now. We'll return at 6:50 with the live stream again. And I apologize for